I accidentally overheard my parents deciding that everything they had would go to my brother Alejandro. The house, the accounts, the business shares, every single peso left from the restaurants. The next day my mother sent me a cold message. Do not call me or come over. This is over between us. I only replied with one word. Understood. The next morning my phone would not stop ringing. My name is Elena Vargas. I am 33 years old and I work as an interior designer in Mexico City. That was never what my family wanted for me. My parents had a chain of family restaurants spread throughout the city. Casual Mexican food, breakfasts, set lunches, coffee from the pot and fresh waters. 5 branches in total. In Del Val, Coyoacán, Narvarte, Santa Maria la Rivera and Tlalpan. My father Don Javier Castillo built the business when I was a little girl. Since then he made it clear that his 2 children would one day work there. For him the restaurants were not just restaurants. They were his pride, his legacy, the proof that he had done something important with his life. My younger brother Alejandro Castillo was 31 years old and he swallowed that idea whole since he was a child. He loved feeling like the heir, the chosen one, the one who would one day be in charge. I did not. I had other plans. From a young age it was clear who the favorite was. No one needed to say it. It showed in every decision. When I was 14 and Alejandro was 11 we both asked for new bicycles for Christmas. Alejandro received an expensive mountain bike with suspension and gears. I received a used one that my father bought at a bazaar and painted to make it look new. When I was 17 I got a ticket for parking badly. I had to pay it with my savings and they took the car away from me for a month. 2 years later when Alejandro crashed because he was looking at his phone my father bought him a newer model. He said everyone makes mistakes. But what stayed with me most was one night when Alejandro at 19 forgot to close the Del Val branch properly. I was visiting Mexico City because by then I was already studying away. They broke in, took money from the register, broke equipment, destroyed part of the furniture and left losses of almost 280,000 pesos. My father put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Everyone makes mistakes, son. Next time we will be more careful." My mother Sophia only nodded in silence. As always I was sitting in the dining room thinking that if I had done something like that they would have called me irresponsible for the rest of my life. When I turned 18 I was accepted into a university in Guadalajara to study interior design. I was happy. I showed the acceptance letter to my father hoping for at least a little pride. His face turned cold. "If you do not get into the restaurants you're on your own," he told me. "We are not going to pay for a design degree when you should be learning the family business." My mother was at his side with her lips pressed tight. She said nothing. Her silence was already an answer. Alejandro smiled as if he had just been given a prize. For him it meant more space, more attention, more future inside the business. So I left anyway. I worked at whatever I could. At night I waited tables and during the day I helped other students with plans and presentations. I also took out educational loans that I finished paying years later. It was not easy. There were days when I ate the cheapest food to buy materials and nights when I fell asleep over the plans, but I graduated with honors. Then I returned to Mexico City and started building my life from zero. First I did small projects, apartments, clinics and neighborhood cafe. Then came residences, boutique hotels, commercial spaces and clients with more serious budgets. In addition I studied business administration and later did a master's degree even though my father insisted that I only knew how to decorate. By the time I was 33 I was signing contracts for several million pesos and they were looking for me for high-level spaces in the city. 5 years earlier when I was 28 my mother got sick with cancer. I still remember the call. My father sounded more annoyed than scared as if the illness was an administrative problem. The treatments were expensive. His policy did not cover everything: deductibles, co-insurances, studies, medications, specialists and procedures that could not wait. The restaurants were already dragging problems due to rising costs, rents, salaries and suppliers. My father kept repeating that it was a bad streak, but I knew it was not just that. I did not think twice. I started paying. I paid for studies, medications, treatments, consultations, transfers, everything that was needed. I even covered the care with a private specialist who adjusted the treatment and helped my mother enter remission. When I did the math later I must have put in close to 1,800,000 pesos in that stage alone. My father said they were going to pay me back when things improved. He knew it was not true. I knew it too, but I did not care. She was my mother. After she recovered she sent me a message. "Thank you for everything, my little daughter. That was all. No long call, no visit, no real conversation. Just a message. 3 years before all this, when I was 30, Alejandro decided to start his own project, a gourmet food truck, something with artisanal burgers, reinvented tacos, and a pretentious name. In 6 months it was already sunk. He had overdrawn cards, owed suppliers, and could not even cover his share of the expenses of the family restaurants. My father called me. Your brother needs help. He did not ask for my opinion, he just let me know as if it was my obligation. I transferred 450,000 pesos to cover Alejandro's debts and another 270,000 pesos so that the restaurants would not go under at that moment. And do you know what Alejandro did at the next family barbecue? He stood up with a beer in his hand and told everyone that he had known how to navigate a complicated stage of the market, that he had restructured his finances, and that he was ready to come back stronger. Not a word about my money, not one. But I kept giving. When kitchen equipment broke down, I paid. When my mother needed follow-up consultations, I paid. When there was a need to settle with a client who fell in a restaurant, I paid. When there was not enough for gas, electricity, or suppliers, I paid. Some supports were emergency, others became routine. There were months when they did not even ask if I could. They just assumed I was going to fix it. Every time I thought maybe now they will see me as something more than an open wallet. But no. At every family meal my father talked about the restaurants, about Alejandro's potential, about his vision to grow. My mother listened with a tired smile. Alejandro nodded as if he was already the general director of something huge, and I, who was covering many of those bills, was left sitting there like a stone guest. That is how we arrived at the present. My father's restaurants were losing money again. He called me at the beginning of the week and said we needed a family dinner to talk about important business matters. I went to their house in Coyoacán one Thursday night. I left with more than an hour to spare because crossing half the city in the afternoon can become eternal. Even so, I arrived almost exactly on time. My mother had prepared beef stew with potatoes, my father's favorite dish. The table had that strange formality of dinners where you know you were not invited out of affection. Alejandro was there with his fiancée Camila. They had been together for about a year. Camila seemed nice to me. She was intelligent, scented, too sensible for my brother. Alejandro said she was learning the administrative part of the business to help when they got married. We had barely started eating when my father cleared his throat. Elena, we need 900,000 pesos for renovations, arrears with suppliers, and the down payment for a 6th branch. Just like that. Not a how are you. Not a nice to see you. Nothing, just give us 900,000. I put the fork on the plate and took my bag. In fact, father, I have been working on something. I took out a thick folder full of papers, plans, graphs, and proposals. I had made a complete optimization plan for the restaurants. I analyzed costs, operation, customer flow, and space design. I also prepared a sustainable renovation proposal to modernize the spaces and attract a younger audience without losing the family essence. I opened the folder. For the first time in a long time, I was excited to contribute something more than money. I want to start with the cost analysis. If we look at current expenses versus projected ones, we can reduce losses from the first quarter. No one needs to review our expenses, interrupted Alejandro. His tone was sharp. Then he let out a forced laugh. Come on, Elena. You decorate rich people's houses. You do not know anything about running restaurants besides design. I have a master's degree in business administration, I reminded him. My father raised a hand as if swatting a fly. That is a waste of time. Alejandro is working on opening a 6th branch. That is the priority. I looked at my mother. I expected something, a word, a gesture, anything, but she remained silent. Back straight, chin up, aligned with her husband and son. As always. I closed the folder. Then I cannot help you. I do not have 900,000 pesos available for this. The silence fell heavy. My father's face turned red. My mother lowered her gaze to the plate. Alejandro looked at me as if I had just ruined his life. Camila tried to intervene. Elena, this looks impressive. Maybe they could review it calmly. Camila, do not get involved in family matters, snapped Alejandro. She stayed still, uncomfortable. I put away my folder. The others turned in their chairs and started talking among themselves as if I was no longer there. Only Camila kept looking at me from time to time with something like shame in her eyes. I left without saying goodbye. When I arrived at my apartment, I left the folder on the table with more force than necessary. Hours of research, designs, and projections. All ignored in less than 5 minutes. I prepared an infusion of chamomile. That night it did not work much, but at least I tried. A couple of weeks passed. Work kept me busy. I had 3 projects running at the same time, and that helped me not think too much about the family, but I also did something with that folder. I was not going to let all that work die on my table just because my father and Alejandro had felt offended. I adapted the proposal, removed what was too specific to their branches, and turned it into a model for restaurant chains. Then I sent it to a contact who worked with large gastronomic groups. I did not expect an immediate response. The contact responded faster than I imagined. The group was already looking to renovate several branches, and my proposal landed right in that search. Then I remembered that I had left several old portfolios in the attic of my parents' house. They were university works, sketches, and boards that I needed for a retrospective presentation. I called my mother. It rang and rang until the voicemail came on. That was strange. She almost always answered, especially in the afternoon. I tried the same thing the next day. The Wednesday after work, I decided to go directly for my things. I arrived almost at 6. After moving slowly through traffic toward Coyocorn, the 2 cars were in the entrance, so they were home. I knocked on the door, no one opened. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. In the end, I took out the emergency key they had given me years before when they still trusted me to solve problems. No one had asked for it back. I entered. I was about to say, "It is me," when I heard my name from the living room. They were talking loudly. Almost arguing. "Alejandro is the only one involved in the family business," my father was saying. "He respects our traditions. He is always on our side. Elena lives her life and does not care what happens to us." I froze in the hallway. "We have to change the will," my father continued. "Everything should go to Alejandro. The house, the accounts, the business shares, everything." "Father, thank you," said Alejandro with a joy that turned my stomach. "Really, I will not fail you." Then I heard my mother's voice. She sounded insecure, but "Elena has given us a lot of money all these years. She paid for my treatments. We cannot pretend she did nothing. She is an ATM for us." My father interrupted her with a harshness I did not know he had. "Do you think she can buy our affection with money? Someone like that does not deserve respect, much less an inheritance." Alejandro laughed. He really laughed. "Exactly, father." After that, my mother fell silent. She did not say another word. I left the house as slowly as I had entered. I got to the car, closed the door, and drove back almost without realizing it. My hands were shaking the whole way. They had already decided. I was not their daughter, I was their source of money. The next day I understood that they were not even thinking of waiting for me to ask. For them, my refusing to give them another 900,000 pesos had been a betrayal. Everything I had paid before no longer counted. My phone vibrated with a message from my mother. "Do not call me or come over. This is over between us." Just like that, without explanation, without context. Although after what I had heard, I did not need it either. I wrote a single word. Understood. Then I opened my bank's app. Over the years, I had scheduled too many payments for my mother's medicines and follow-up consultations. Almost 9,000 pesos a month for Alejandro's debts, about 15,000 pesos for services, gas, electricity, and urgent payments to suppliers of 2 restaurants, around 55,000 pesos. Direct debit scheduled payments by card, payments I made without thinking because they were already routine. I cancelled everything one by one, without crying, without doubting, without sending notice. The next morning my phone exploded. Before 9 I already had 27 missed calls. Messages, audios, emails, everything. The first voicemail from Alejandro was aggressive. "You are selfish, Elena. How could you do this to us after everything we did for you? You are pathetic. Really, you are pathetic." My mother sent message after message. "How can you do this after everything I went through? I almost died, Elena. My medicines, my consultations, how can you? You are breaking my heart. This is how you treat your sick mother." My father's emails were shorter but just as demanding. "Fix this immediately. The restaurants will not survive without your support. Reactivate the payments today." I did not answer any of them, not a call, not a message, not an email. But they did not give up. My mother showed up at my apartment 3 times that week. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway, knocking for 15 or 20 minutes. "Elena, please open. We need to talk. Please, daughter. I am your mother." I sat in the living room with my laptop open, pretending not to hear her. Sooner or later she left, but she always came back. The worst was when Alejandro started showing up at my office. First, he stayed near the reception. Then he started waiting for me outside the building next to the parking entrance. One afternoon he blocked my path. "You cannot avoid us forever," he said. "Move aside, Alejandro. You owe us this. You owe it to me." I do not owe you anything. I am not moving until you reactivate the payments. He spoke louder and louder. His face was red with anger. Several colleagues were walking toward their cars and stopped when they saw the scene. Everything okay, Elena? Asked Tomas, my external accountant who had come that day to review some contracts. My brother was just leaving, I said. No, I was not leaving, replied Alejandro. Tomas and two other colleagues approached a little more. I think you were, said Tomas. Calm but firm. Alejandro looked at the three men, then looked at me. This is not over here. He left. But that same day I notified reception and the parking guard not to let him up. I also started leaving accompanied by Tomas or someone from the team. I hated needing that, but Alejandro had shown himself capable of doing something stupid 3 days after that episode. I was in my office reviewing fabric samples when my project assistant knocked on the door. There is a Camila here to see you. She says it is urgent and personal. I stayed still for a few seconds. Let her in. Camila entered, nervous, almost scared. She was holding a manila folder tightly against her chest and kept looking back as if she feared someone had followed her. Camila, if Alejandro sent you. I stopped. I did not even want to finish the sentence. No, she said quickly. He does not know I am here. Can I sit down? I nodded. She sat in front of my desk and pushed the folder toward me. You have to see this, she said. I cannot stay silent anymore. Not after what they are doing to you. I opened the folder. Bank statements, receipts, vouchers and bank movements from the restaurants of the last 3 years. Some data was marked, others underlined. What am I looking at? I asked. Proof, she said. Alejandro has been taking money from the restaurants. A lot of money, Elena, that is why they're always in trouble. I started reviewing the papers. As I flipped through the pages, I felt my chest tighten. Transfers to personal accounts, payments with business cards at luxury hotels, flights to Los Cabos in business class, a watch worth more than 200,000 pesos, inflated invoices, non-existent suppliers, yacht rentals that Alejandro had presented as business meetings. Everything was coming out of the restaurant's accounts. How did you get this? I asked. I have been helping with the accounting for 6 months, said Camila. Alejandro gave me access to reports, invoices and bank statements because he wanted me to learn the administrative part before we got married, but the more I reviewed, the more I found. He has been taking money for years. Why are you showing this to me? Camila's eyes filled with tears. I was going to marry him, Elena, and every time I opened another invoice I felt more ashamed. I cannot keep pretending I do not see. I am going to leave him. But I thought you deserved to know the truth first. I stayed looking at her without knowing what to say. Thank you, I said at last. Really, this explains too many things. When Camila left, I stayed alone in my office doing the math between the 1,800,000 pesos for my mother, the 720,000 for Alejandro, and the restaurants, the monthly payments, the equipment, the repairs and the agreements I had been covering. The figure went over 4 million pesos, and Alejandro stealing at the same time. A week later my mother called from a number I did not have saved. I answered without thinking. It was a mistake, but it was already done. We need to meet, she said without greeting. All of us to talk about the family situation. Tomorrow at 2 in a cafe in Roma Norte. I accepted not because I wanted to reconcile, I accepted because I also had things to say. I arrived early at the cafe and asked for a table by the window. I wanted to see them come in. I wanted to be calm when they arrived. At 2 o'clock sharp the three of them appeared. My mother, my father and Alejandro. They sat in front of me as if it was a business meeting. My father started immediately. He did not even say hello. Your tantrum is destroying the family business. You need to restore the payments immediately. I let out a short laugh. I could not help it. Tantrum, that is what they call it when someone stops being their ATM. My father turned red. What did you say? Did you hear me? Just like I heard you in the living room of your house calling me an ATM and saying I did not deserve respect. My mother paled. You were there. I went for my portfolios from the attic, but yes, I heard everything, including the part where you decided to leave everything to Alejandro, the house, the restaurants and everything else. That was a private family matter, said my father. I was family, I replied. Until mother wrote to me that this was over between us. You were twisting things, said Alejandro. You were hurt and jealous. That is all. Jealous. I took out copies of the documents that Camila had left me with some bank data covered and put them on the table. Then explain this to me. 3 years of diversions, Alejandro. More than 1 million pesos coming out of the restaurant's accounts while you blamed everyone but yourself. Alejandro lost the color from his face. That is false. You fabricated that to make me look bad. My father took the papers and started reviewing them. He looked at 2 pages. His jaw tensed. For a second I saw that he understood. Then he did what he always did. He chose not to look. He turned his gaze back to me. Now you are spying on us. Do you want to destroy this family? I have given more than 4 million pesos to this family, I said. While Alejandro was stealing while you called me an ATM while you took me out of the will. Family helps family, said my father. Really? Then where is Alejandro's help? Oh right, he is too busy taking money. I did not steal anything, shouted Alejandro loud enough that several tables turned. The receipts say otherwise. Even if there were some irregularities, said my father carefully. That is an internal matter. You had no right to cut us off like that. I had every right. It is my money. The restaurants are going to go bankrupt. Then let Alejandro save them. He is the son you are proud of, is he not? The one who deserves to keep everything. My father looked at me with a coldness that would have hurt me more before. When this blows up, do not come saying no one warned you. I stood up from the chair, adjusted my bag on my shoulder, and before leaving I remembered something. Oh, before I forget, do you remember the business plan you rejected? The one Alejandro said was useless. My mother raised her gaze. My father frowned. Yesterday I signed with Pacific Gastronomic Group. 9 million pesos for the strategy, the pilot redesign and gradual implementation in their 40 branches. My mother's mouth opened. My father stayed still. Alejandro looked like he was about to get sick. They loved the concept of sustainable renovation, I continued. They said it was exactly what they were looking for. Design, cost reduction, customer experience, and a clear strategy to modernize without losing identity. You cannot do that, stammered my father. That plan was for our restaurants. You rejected it. You said it was a waste of time. Then I adapted it. I presented it to someone who did want to listen and they hired it. He did not respond. I walked toward the door. Before leaving I looked back one last time. Let's see how well your chosen son takes care of you too. I am done being your source of money. The last thing I heard was Alejandro calling me ungrateful and my father telling him to shut up because everyone was watching. I walked out into the afternoon of Mexico City feeling lighter than I had felt in years. That same day I blocked their numbers, their emails, and their social networks. Total silence. During the following weeks I threw myself fully into my work. With the contract from the Pacific Gastronomic Group I was finally able to expand my studio. It was not 9 million free or immediate, but it was stability and an advance that allowed me to grow. I hired 2 junior designers and an administrative coordinator. A boutique hotel chain contacted me to redesign several properties in Mexico City, Querétaro, Puebla, and Guadalajara. It was the kind of contract I used to dream about from afar. 6 months passed since that meeting in the cafe. My company was growing like never before. We had taken on 12 important projects. The hotel chain contract alone represented 36 million pesos in work spread over 3 years. It was not all profit, but it gave us stability. I moved to a better apartment near Reforma with space for a home office and a beautiful view of the city. I no longer had to look over my shoulder in parking lots. There were no more knocks on the door that I pretended not to hear. There were no more emergency calls that were really money requests. For the first time in years my life was peaceful. One afternoon while shopping at City Market I ran into my Aunt Patricia. She was my father's sister, but she and I had always had a good relationship. When she saw me she smiled uncomfortably. Elena, daughter, how are you? Fine, Aunt. Really fine. She adjusted the bag on her arm as if she was deciding whether she should say something. Have you heard anything about the restaurants? No, they no longer exist, she said. They fell one by one. First they reduced hours, then closed 2 branches, then sold equipment to pay debts. Last month they closed the last one. Without your payments with suppliers on top and with Alejandro taking money until the end, they did not last even half a year. I felt something, but it was not satisfaction nor sadness. It was more like a serene emptiness, as if a part of my story had finally fallen into place. I see. Alejandro is in legal trouble, my aunt continued. When the suppliers started suing, your father hired an external accountant to negotiate debts. There came out more than what was already known. Alejandro kept taking money until the end. Your father took too long to take away his bank keys, and by the time he wanted to do it there was very little left. I took a deep breath, and my parents sold the house in Coyoacán. They bought a small apartment. My father is working in a materials and tools store. My mother got a part-time job at Liverpool. The parents of the Golden Son reduced to selling the house and starting over in their 60s. The irony was too clear to ignore. They asked about you, said my aunt carefully. I am not telling you to forgive them, I just thought you should know. I thanked her and finished my shopping. The encounter stayed spinning in my head, but not enough to look for them. 2 weeks later, I received a call from a number I did not have saved. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena, said my mother. She sounded old and tired. Please do not hang up. What do you want? I needed to apologize, not ask you for anything, just to say I am sorry. I stayed silent. I do not know how to fix this, she continued. I do not even know if I have the right to call you. We failed you. We used you. We chose Alejandro over you again and again. I should have defended you when your father called you an ATM. I should have said something, but I stayed silent. I was a coward. I felt a lump in my throat, but I did not give in. Do you feel sorry because they lost everything or because they hurt me? There was a long pause. Both things, she said at last. I know it sounds horrible, but it is the truth. Losing everything forced me to look at what we had done. We valued you more for what you paid than for who you were, and that has no easy forgiveness. At least you were being honest. We could have a coffee someday. No, now if you do not want. Just to talk. I am not going to ask you for money. I am not going to send anyone. I just wanted to know if someday. I said firmly. You wrote to me that this was over between us. At that moment you meant it. Now I do too. I heard her breathe on the other end of the line. I understand, she said with a broken voice. I am not going to insist. I just want you to know that yes, I am proud of you. I took too long to say it, and it does not serve much now, but it is true. I closed my eyes. Goodbye, Mother. Goodbye, Elena. Be happy. I hung up and deleted the number. This time she really did something. She did not look for me again. Several months later, my Aunt Patricia told me that Alejandro ended up accepting responsibility for fraudulent administration. My father, pressured by the debts and by his own lawyers, had to file a complaint. After an audit and months of back and forth, Alejandro accepted a summary procedure. They gave him a sentence of 1.5 years and the obligation to repair the damage, although he no longer had anything to pay with. My parents continued living in their small apartment, working in modest jobs. The business they built disappeared. The son they chose abandoned them. The daughter they discarded moved forward without them. I put all my energy into my company. My firm became one of the most solid design studios in Mexico City. We reached 18 employees. We opened a small office in Guadalajara, and we had more work than we could accept. Last month I signed the purchase of a house in San Ángel with credit and years of savings on top. It is an old remodeled house with 4 bedrooms, original wooden floors, and a garden that reminds me of the one my mother used to take care of before everything revolved around the restaurants and Alejandro. Sometimes I pass near one of the old branches. There is almost nothing left. One is a specialty coffee shop, another is a yoga studio. Another became a Vietnamese restaurant that they say is really good. In one of the windows you can still see the shadow where the family business sign used to be. That is all that remains of their legacy. Stickers stuck to the glass. I do not regret having cut them out of my life. It still hurts, but I do not regret it. They showed me what I was to them. As long as I was useful, they looked for me. When I stopped paying, I stopped existing. When they lost everything, suddenly I mattered to them again. But by then it was too late. Camila sent me a card at Christmas. She is engaged to someone else and works as an accountant in a serious firm. You can tell she is happy. She thanked me for having been kind to her when she brought me those documents. She said that gave her the courage to leave. I think that is what I did too. I started over. For years I confused helping with belonging. Every transfer was a way to stay close. When I stopped paying, I understood the truth. There was no place for me in that family, only an account open in my name. My family got what they wanted with Alejandro, complete without my presence or my money getting in the way. In the end, staying with him cost them more than anyone wanted to admit. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.